The entire pack turned away from her, until the ground shook beneath a massive stranger stepping out of the shadows.
He didn't ask.
He didn't hesitate. He leaned in, his ice-pale eyes locking onto hers as he growled, "Pretend you belong to me." And as every wolf froze in disbelief, Seraphine realized one terrifying truth. She had seconds to decide whether this was salvation, or a trap she might never escape. Step into a world where wolves choose their mates under starlit skies and where one girl stands alone, unwanted by everyone, until a fearsome alpha from the shadows claims her with 5 words that change destiny. Pretend you belong to me. If you're ready for a story filled with betrayal, ancient laws, brutal trials, and a heroine who rises from humiliation to power, keep watching. Your next obsession begins here. All set. Let's begin. Seraphine Blackthorn sat alone on the weathered wooden bench, her hands folded carefully in her lap, her crimson gown a splash of defiance against the gray stone of the ceremony grounds. Around her, the Iron Veil pack celebrated beneath a canopy of stars and firelight. Drums pounded a primal rhythm as dancers whirled past the roaring bonfires, their laughter sharp and bright. Newly mated pairs pressed close together, whispering promises, while unmated females preened and postured, hoping to catch an alpha's eye. Seraphine kept her gaze fixed on the flames. She had learned long ago not to hope. Hope was a cruelty reserved for wolves with clean bloodlines and proud names. The Blackthorns had once been respected healers, their ancestral knowledge whispered with reverence. But her father's banishment had burned that legacy to ash, leaving only a stain no amount of silence could scrub away. "Still here, I see," a voice murmured nearby, laced with pity. Seraphine didn't turn. She knew the tone well. The ceremony continued, the ancient rite of claiming unfolding as it had for centuries. One by one, alphas stepped forward to choose their mates. A golden-haired beta named Alara was claimed by a warrior from the northern ridge. Cheers erupted. Another female, younger and stronger than Seraphine, accepted a towering hunter's hand. More celebration. Seraphine's fingers tightened in the folds of her gown. The crowd thinned. Fewer unmated wolves remained now, and the whispers grew sharper, colder. She felt their stares like brands against her skin. Seraphine Blackthorn, the ceremony master's voice rang out across the grounds. Her heart stuttered. She rose on unsteady legs, the red fabric of her dress catching the firelight as she stepped onto the raised platform. The drums fell silent. Every eye turned toward her. No one moved. The seconds stretched into agony. Alphas stood in clusters, arms crossed, expressions carefully neutral. Some looked away. Others stared with open disdain. Not a single wolf stepped forward. Shame burned hotter than the bonfires surrounding her. Seraphine fought to keep her chin lifted, her breathing steady, but humiliation wrapped around her throat like a noose. This was what she had feared. This was what she had always known would happen. The ceremony master opened his mouth to dismiss her when movement stirred at the edge of the torchlight. A figure emerged from the tree line, massive and shadow-draped. Fur lined his broad shoulders, and battle-worn leather armor covered his chest. His dark hair was tied back, revealing a face carved by violence and winter, a scar cutting through one thick brow. He moved with the deadly grace of a predator, and the crowd instinctively parted before him. Phelan Darkwood, alpha of the distant Frostmourne clan. Seraphine's breath caught as he approached the platform, his pale eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. He stopped just beside her, so close she could feel the cold radiating from him like frost. The entire ceremony froze. He leaned down, his voice a low rumble meant only for her ears. "Pretend you belong to me." Seraphine's heart thundered. Around them, shocked silence gave way to confused murmurs. Every wolf in Iron Veil stared, suspended between disbelief and scandal. She had seconds to decide. Stand beside this dangerous stranger, or crumble beneath the weight of her pack's rejection. Her fate balanced on the edge of a blade. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Seraphine's pulse roared in her ears as Phelan Darkwood's words echoed in her mind. Pretend you belong to me. Around them, the Iron Veil pack stirred like a disturbed hive, confusion morphing into shock, then outrage. Who is this outsider? Someone hissed from the crowd. He cannot simply. This violates tradition. The ceremony master stepped forward, his weathered face pale beneath his ceremonial markings. Stranger, you have no authority here. State your name and your claim. Phelan didn't flinch. His pale eyes remained fixed on Seraphine for one more heartbeat before he turned to face the gathered wolves. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of glaciers and ancient stone. I am Phelan Darkwood, Alpha of the Frostmourne clan. A ripple of recognition and fear moved through the crowd. I invoke the right of far claiming, as is my right under the old laws. The ceremony master faltered. Ironvale's elders exchanged uneasy glances. The old laws predated their grandfathers' grandfathers, carved into wolf memory when the first packs roamed wild and borders meant nothing. The far claiming has not been invoked in generations, Elder Corwin protested, his jowls quivering with indignation. You cannot simply. I can. Phelan's tone brooked no argument. Unless Ironvale wishes to declare the old laws void, to break covenant with every pack that honors them. Silence fell like snow. Seraphine's knees threatened to buckle. This massive stranger had just claimed her using laws so ancient even the elders couldn't refute them. She should be terrified. She was terrified, but beneath the fear bloomed something else. Something that felt dangerously like hope. Phelan extended his hand to her, palm upward. An offering, not a command. Every eye in Ironvale watched. Waited. Seraphine placed her trembling hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm despite the cold that seemed to cling to him. The drums resumed, slower now, ceremonial. The Frostmourne Alpha guided her down from the platform, and the crowd parted before them, like water before a ship's prow. No one dared speak. No one challenged. Within minutes, Seraphine found herself mounted on a massive gray destrier, Phelan seated behind her, his presence solid as mountain stone. They left Ironvale with an escort of 4 Frostmourne warriors who had materialized from the forest's edge, silent, armed, deadly. Only when the torches of her homeland disappeared behind the trees did Phelan speak again, his voice low enough that only she could hear. I need you to understand something. His breath stirred her hair. I require a mate for a war council convening at winter's end. An ancient prophecy demands it. Not a lover, not a companion, just a role filled. Seraphine's throat tightened. Why me? Because you were unclaimed, he said simply, and unbound. You have no alpha to answer to, no pack to negotiate with. You were convenient. The words stung worse than any slap. They rode in silence through the deepening night, the terrain growing rougher, the air colder. By dawn, they had crossed into Frostmourne territory. Seraphine saw the wolves before they emerged fully, shadows among the pines, eyes gleaming like amber coins in the weak morning light. Dozens of them. Watching. Judging. A woman stepped onto the frost-rimed path ahead, tall and battle-scarred, her blonde braids threaded with bone beads. Her expression was carved from pure contempt. So, she said, her voice sharp as broken ice. This is the outsider you've brought to shame us. Seraphine's blood turned cold. Phelan's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on the reins. This, he said quietly, is my mate. And you'll show her the respect her position demands. The woman's smile was all teeth and winter cruelty. Respect, she said, must be earned. The Frostmourne's stronghold rose from the mountainside like a scar carved into stone and ice. Massive timber gates, reinforced with iron, stood open just wide enough to admit their party, flanked by warriors whose eyes tracked Seraphine's every movement. Torchlight flickered against walls of dark granite, casting dancing shadows that made the fortress feel alive and watchful. Seraphine had never seen anything so harsh, so utterly unforgiving. They dismounted in a courtyard where snow had been packed into submission by countless boots. Warriors trained in clusters, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air as steel rang against steel. Every one of them paused when Phelan strode past, their gazes sliding to Seraphine with open calculation. She felt stripped bare beneath their scrutiny. Her flame-red hair marked her as different. Her slight frame, built for healing hands rather than battle, marked her as weak. "She looks like she'd snap in a strong wind," someone muttered. Low laughter followed. The blonde woman from the path, Brynja, Seraphine had learned during the journey, walked ahead with purposeful strides, her spine rigid with displeasure. She threw open the doors to the great hall with enough force to make them slam against stone. Inside, a massive hearth roared with flame, but the warmth couldn't touch the chill that permeated the space. A long table dominated the center, surrounded by weathered faces belonging to Frostmourn's council. They rose as Phelan entered, their expressions ranging from confusion to barely concealed fury. An elder with a silver beard and eyes like chips of flint stepped forward. Phelan Darkwood. His voice carried the weight of authority earned through decades of survival. "You return from the south with this?" Elder Malric. Phelan's tone remained neutral, but Seraphine felt the tension coiling through him. "I have claimed a mate, as the prophecy requires." "A mate of what line?" Another council member spoke, a broad-shouldered woman with scars crossing her weathered face. "We know nothing of her. Nothing of her strength, her loyalty, her worth." "She is Seraphine Blackthorn," Phelan said evenly. "Of Iron Vale." "Blackthorn?" Malric's lip curled. "The disgraced healer line? The family banished for?" "Her family's past is irrelevant," Phelan cut in, his voice hardening to steel. "Is it?" Brynja turned from where she'd been standing by the fire, her amber eyes blazing. "You bring us an outsider with tainted blood and a body too soft for our winters. She'll break before the first snow melts." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathered wolves. Malric stepped closer, his gaze raking over Seraphine with undisguised contempt. "The prophecy demands a mate, yes. But Frostmourn law demands more than a warm body filling a role." He turned to address the council. "I invoke the triune proving." The hall fell silent. Seraphine's stomach dropped. She'd heard whispers of the proving during the journey, ancient trials designed to break the unworthy. The outsider must face 3 trials. Malric continued, his words deliberate and cutting. The trial of claws, to test her courage in combat. The trial of runes, to test her mind and truth. The trial of the wilds, to test her endurance and will to survive. His smile was cold as winter dawn. Only by passing all 3 will she earn the right to stand as Frostmourn's Luna. "And if she fails?" Seraphine heard herself ask, her voice steadier than she felt. Malric's smile widened. "Exile. Or death, depending on which trial claims you." Every eye turned to her, waiting, judging. Phelan stood rigid beside her, his jaw clenched. He hadn't warned her, hadn't prepared her. She was alone in this, just as she'd been alone on that platform in Iron Vale. But this time, something different stirred beneath her fear. Something that had been dormant too long. Seraphine lifted her chin, meeting Malric's cold stare without flinching. "I accept." Her hands trembled in the folds of her cloak, but her voice didn't waver. The council exchanged glances. Brynja's expression shifted, surprise flickering across her features before contempt reasserted itself. Malric's smile turned predatory. "Then let the proving begin. Take a breath, because from here on out, the story only gets darker, deeper, and more intense. Ready? Then let's go." The frozen arena lay in a hollow carved from ice and stone, its circular floor dusted with new snow that crunched beneath Seraphine's boots. Torches mounted on jagged pillars spat blue flames, their light flickering across the crowd of gathered frost-morn wolves. Their breath rose in ghostly clouds as they watched her step into the ring, an outsider walking willingly into judgment. Brynja waited at the far end, arms folded, shoulders squared, every inch the warrior the clan revered. Her blonde braids swung against her armor as she rolled her neck and cracked her knuckles. "Try not to faint too quickly," she called, voice carrying easily across the arena. The people came to see a fight. Seraphine didn't respond. She couldn't. Her mouth had gone dry the moment she'd stepped under the torch's eerie glow. Brynja looked twice her size, bigger, stronger, a creature carved from stone and winter storms. But Seraphine forced her spine straight. She had chosen this. If she backed down now, she would never be taken seriously again. A horn sounded, deep enough to vibrate her bones. The trial began. Brynja moved first, a blur of motion rather than a person. Seraphine barely raised her arms before the warrior hooked a leg behind hers and swept her off her feet. Seraphine hit the snow with a hard thud that knocked the wind from her lungs. "Up," Brynja said simply. Seraphine pushed herself upright, ignoring the sting in her elbows. She barely had time to steady before Brynja charged again. A palm struck her shoulder, spinning her sideways. She stumbled, caught herself, only to be slammed back into the snow. Stars burst behind her eyes. The crowd murmured, unimpressed. Seraphine's ribs ached, but she shoved herself up again, gasping cold air. Brynja snorted. "You're stubborn." Seraphine didn't bother replying. She only lifted her hands again. The next hit came faster. Seraphine ducked, felt Brynja's fists skim her hair, then yelped as an elbow clipped her side. She crumpled, but didn't stay down. She forced herself upright for the third, fourth, fifth time. Phelan stood just beyond the ring, arms crossed, his expression carved from ice. But Seraphine felt the weight of his gaze every time she rose. He wasn't enjoying this. He was evaluating her, testing her. Brynja came at her again, this time with enough force to send Seraphine skidding across the snow. Pain streaked up her spine. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. For a moment, she considered staying down. But then she saw Brynja's expectant stare, the crowd's disdain, Malric's satisfied smirk at the arena's edge. Seraphine planted her palms against the snow and pushed herself upright, legs trembling. A hush fell. Brynja's amber eyes widened, just slightly, before she lunged for the final blow. Seraphine tried to dodge, but her body was too slow. The warrior's fist halted inches from her cheek, the force stirring her hair. Brynja held the pose, breathing hard. Slowly, she lowered her arm. "She has no strength," she said, voice carrying through the silent arena. "But she has a wolf spirit." The crowd erupted, half cheering, half furious. Then Brynja did the unthinkable. She dropped to one knee before Seraphine. "I will not call her weak again." Shouts exploded. Arguments broke out. Wolves surged to their feet in disbelief. Seraphine swayed, exhaustion washing over her in a dizzying wave. But through the chaos, one sound cut through clearly, Phelan's steady, low voice. "She has passed the trial clause. If your heart is racing after that trial, don't stop now. Seraphine has faced blood, bruises, and humiliation, but the trial of runes will expose deeper dangers. Keep watching. The truth she's about to reveal will destroy the entire pack." The Hall of Echoes lived up to its name. Every footstep Seraphine took across the polished stone floor reverberated through the cavernous space, bouncing off walls carved with symbols older than memory. Moon runes spiraled across the vaulted ceiling, their silver inlay catching the light of 100 candles arranged in ceremonial circles. The air smelled of beeswax, cold stone, and ancient secrets. The council sat in a semicircle before her, their faces carved from judgment and winter. Elder Malric occupied the center position, his expression carefully neutral, but Seraphine could see the anticipation glittering in his flint-gray eyes. He expected her to fail, wanted her to fail. She would not give him the satisfaction. The trial of runes tests knowledge, insight, and truth, Malric announced, his voice echoing through the hall. Answer our questions with wisdom, or reveal yourself as unworthy. Seraphine clasped her hands to keep them from shaking. Phelan stood in the shadows at the hall's edge, his expression unreadable, offering neither comfort nor guidance. This trial was hers alone. First question, the scarred councilwoman, Elder Vigdis, began. Name the 3 founding clans of the Northern Territories. Frostmourne, Ironvale, and Silver Peak, Seraphine answered steadily. United under the covenant of Winter's End, sealed with blood and moon oath in the year of the broken star. Vigdis's eyebrows rose fractionally. Approval, perhaps, or mere surprise. The questions continued, each more complex than the last. They tested her knowledge of pack hierarchies, territorial boundaries, ancient treaties. Seraphine drew on everything she'd learned, not just from Ironvale's meager teachings, but from her father's hidden books, the texts he'd smuggled away before his banishment. Her healer's training gave her unexpected advantages. When asked about clan symbols, she identified not just their meanings but their medicinal properties, how moonwort represented healing, how wolfsbane marked boundaries of protection and poison both. Malric's expression grew increasingly sour as she answered correctly, again and again. Enough of these simple recitations, he said sharply, leaning forward. Let us test her understanding of strategy. His smile was blade-thin. Tell us, outsider, when 2 packs dispute territory, what determines rightful ownership? A trap question. Multiple valid answers, each with political implications. Strength of claim through ancestral blood, Seraphine said carefully, but also strength of stewardship. A pack that lets its territory fall to ruin has no moral right to hold it, regardless of bloodline. Several council members shifted. The answer challenged traditional hierarchy while honoring pragmatic governance. Malric's jaw tightened. And if a pack's alpha is challenged from within, what then? Then the pack decides, Seraphine said quietly, through trial or through trust. But a challenge built on deception rather than honor poisons the entire pack from within. Silence fell like fresh snow. Malric's eyes narrowed. Final question. His voice dropped, dangerous and soft. What threatens Frostmourne most, outsider? Our enemies beyond the borders? The harsh winters? The old magic stirring in the deep woods? Every eye fixed on her. This was the question that mattered. Her answer would define how they saw her, as naive fool or perceptive threat. Seraphine met Malric's gaze directly. The traitor among you. The words dropped into the hall like stones into still water, rippling outward in waves of shock. Gasps echoed off ancient walls. Council members turned to one another, confusion and suspicion blooming across weathered faces. Malric's carefully neutral expression cracked. Just for an instant, a flicker of something cold and calculating, before the mask reasserted itself. But Seraphine saw it. And from the shadows, Phelan's pale eyes sharpened, his entire posture shifting from observer to predator. How dare you? Malric began, rising from a seat. She answers the question as asked. Vigdis cut in, her scarred face thoughtful. And perhaps more honestly than we wish to hear. Chaos erupted. Council members arguing, voices rising, accusations flying like arrows in the dark. Seraphine stood motionless in the center of the storm she'd unleashed, her heart thundering, watching Phelan watch Malric with the focused intensity of a wolf who'd finally scented blood. 3 days passed in careful observation and aching muscles. Seraphine learned the rhythms of Frostmourne, The dawn training sessions where warriors moved like deadly dancers through snow, the evening meals shared in the great hall where laughter came hard-earned and respect harder still. She memorized faces, noted alliances, watched how power moved through the pack like currents beneath ice. And she trained. Brynja appeared each morning without explanation, her expression still carved from disapproval, but her instruction brutally effective. She taught Seraphine how to fall without breaking, how to read an opponent's weight shift, how to turn weakness into unexpected advantage. "You'll never overpower anyone," Brynja said bluntly, correcting Seraphine's stance. "So stop trying. Use their strength against them." It wasn't friendship, but it was no longer open hostility. On the fourth evening, Phelan found Seraphine on the ramparts, watching snow fall over the darkening forest. "You surprised them," he said quietly, joining her at the wall. "The trial of runes. Even Malric. Especially Malric." Seraphine pulled her fur cloak tighter. "He's hiding something." Phelan was silent for a long moment. "The war I mentioned. It's closer than most know. The Lifeblood Council convenes at winter's end. 5 great packs deciding the fate of our territories." His jaw tightened. "Ancient law requires the alpha to stand with a marked mate, or forfeit his voice entirely." Marked. Seraphine turned to face him. "Proven. Tested. Accepted." His pale eyes found hers. "Without you passing these trials, Frostmourne loses its seat at the table. Our enemies know this." Understanding crystallized like frost. "Malric. Perhaps." Phelan's expression darkened. "Or someone who wants Frostmourne weakened when war comes." That night, Seraphine woke with warmth flooding through her veins. Not fever, but something deeper. Moonlight streaming through her window seemed to respond to her racing pulse, growing brighter, warmer, alive. She pressed her palm against the cold stone wall and watched silvery light bloom beneath her fingertips. Her bloodline gift awakening. She barely had time to process it before morning horns shattered the dawn silence. The council had assembled in the courtyard, their faces grim. Elder Vigdis stepped forward, her voice carrying across the gathered pack. "The final trial begins at nightfall. Seraphine Blackthorn will enter the Frost Harrow alone and survive 3 nights in its depths." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Even hardened warriors looked uneasy. "The Frost Harrow does not forgive weakness," Vigdis continued. "What enters may not return." From the shadows near the gates, Elder Malric watched Seraphine with something that looked disturbingly like satisfaction. The trap was set. Now she would walk into it willingly or die trying. "Don't go anywhere." The trials, the betrayals, the prophecy, they're all leading to something none of them are ready for. Including her. The Frost Harrow swallowed her whole. Seraphine stood at its edge as the sun dipped below the horizon, watching shadows lengthen between ancient pines twisted by centuries of bitter wind. The pack had given her wool clothing, a water skin, flint, and a small knife, tools for survival, not comfort. Then they'd left her to the wilderness and whatever dwelled within it. The first night, cold was her only enemy. She found shelter beneath an overhang of stone, built a meager fire, and fought sleep with every weapon she possessed. Exhaustion won eventually, dragging her into restless dreams haunted by voices that weren't quite human. Dawn brought new terrors. The forest seemed alive with malice. Frozen lakes cracked ominously beneath phantom weight. Ruins of some ancient structure jutted from snowdrifts like broken teeth, their surfaces carved with warnings she couldn't read. And everywhere, everywhere, she felt eyes watching from the darkness between trees. She followed the traditional rune markers carved into bark and stone, guiding wanderers to safe passage. But on the second day, something felt wrong. The path led upward at a treacherous angle, ice making each step a gamble. When she crested what should have been a gentle rise, empty air yawned before her, a sheer cliff dropping into mist-shrouded nothing. Seraphine's heart seized. She stumbled backward, catching herself against a boulder. The marker she'd followed was fresh-carved, deliberately misleading. Someone had altered the trail. Malric. That night, the ghost wolves came. They emerged from fog like nightmares given form, translucent, eyes burning cold fire, mouths open in silent howls. Seraphine backed against a crumbling wall, knife trembling in her hand, knowing the blade would pass through them like smoke. Terror clawed at her throat. The lead wolf lunged, and silver light exploded from her outstretched palm. Warmth flooded through her like liquid moonlight, racing down her arm and into the freezing air. The ghost wolves recoiled, whimpering, their forms flickering. Where the light touched a gash on Seraphine's forearm from earlier that day, flesh knitted together, pain evaporating like morning frost. The creatures fled into darkness. Seraphine stared at her trembling hand, at the fading luminescence still clinging to her fingertips. Her father's banishment. Her family's disgrace. The whispered accusations of dark power that had followed the Blackthorn name for generations. Understanding crashed over her like a winter avalanche. Her bloodline had never been cursed. It had been feared, because it carried the ancient gift of moon healing, a power that could mend what others broke, illuminate what others wished to keep hidden. And someone had needed that power buried. The third dawn broke cold and merciless. Seraphine dragged herself through snow that had become her enemy, each step a battle against muscles that screamed for surrender. Frostbite blackened 2 of her fingers. Blood from a dozen cuts had frozen against her skin. But through the trees ahead, she could see torchlight. The gates of Frostmourne, impossibly close and infinitely far. She had survived. Almost. The howl that split the morning air was neither wolf nor wind, but something ancient and vengeful. Seraphine spun, nearly collapsing, as shapes materialized from the tree line, wolf spirits summoned by dark magic, their eyes burning with unnatural hunger. At the forest's edge, barely visible in the pre-dawn shadows, Elder Malric stood with hands raised, lips moving in forbidden incantation. He wasn't just sabotaging her trial. He was trying to murder her. The spirits charged. Seraphine didn't think. She simply released. The moonlight power that had been building inside her for 3 nights erupted outward in a wave of silver radiance. It poured from her skin like liquid starlight, warm and fierce and utterly unyielding. The wolf spirits struck the barrier and shattered like ice against stone, their howls dissolving into silence. The light blazed brighter, visible now from the fortress walls. Seraphine heard shouts, the clash of opening gates, but her vision was narrowing to a tunnel. She took 1 step toward safety.
2.
On the third, her legs finally gave out. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. Phelan's face swam into focus above her, his pale eyes wide with something that looked terrifyingly like fear. "Stay with me," he commanded, his voice rough. "Don't you dare." "I passed," she whispered. Consciousness slipped away. When awareness returned moments later, she was surrounded. The entire pack had gathered in the courtyard, staring not at her face, but at her exposed arms, where silver light still pulsed beneath her skin like veins of luminous moonmetal. "Moonbound," someone whispered, the word rippling through the crowd like prayer. "She carries the moonbound gift." Elder Vigdis stepped forward, her scarred face transformed by wonder. A mythic bloodline. The healers of legend. She turned to the assembled wolves. "She bears the mark of the Ancient Ones." One by one, hardened warriors dropped to one knee. Even Brynja bowed her head, something like awe softening her fierce features. Phelan rose, still cradling Seraphine against his chest, his expression carved from cold fury as his gaze found Malric frozen at the forest's edge. "Seize him." Phelan's voice cut through the stunned silence like a blade. "Elder Malric stands accused of treachery, sabotage, and attempted murder of my mate." Guards moved instantly. Malric tried to run, but Frostmourne warriors were faster, dragging him forward as he snarled denials that rang hollow against the evidence of forbidden magic still lingering in the air. Seraphine's vision blurred again, but she felt Phelan's arms tighten protectively around her. "You survived," he murmured against her hair. "Against everything he threw at you." She had done more than survive. She had proven herself worthy of a pack that once wanted her gone, and exposed the true enemy hiding among them. "If you're still with me, don't stop now. The real danger hasn't even stepped out of the shadows yet. Keep watching, the next chapter changes everything." Seraphine woke to warmth and firelight. She lay in an unfamiliar chamber, wrapped in furs so thick she could barely move. Her body ached with the deep, bone-weary exhaustion that came after surviving the impossible, but the frostbite was gone. Her wounds had closed. Someone had tended her with herbs and poultices that smelled of pine and winter honey. "You heal quickly now." Brinja's voice came from the shadows near the hearth. The warrior woman sat sharpening a blade, her movements methodical. "Your gift works even while you sleep." Seraphine pushed herself upright, wincing. "How long?" 2 days. Brinja set the whetstone aside. "The pack has been restless. Malric's arrest shattered alliances. Some still claim you manipulated what they saw." "And you?" Seraphine met her gaze directly. "What do you believe?" Brinja was silent for a long moment, studying her with those fierce amber eyes. "I believe you faced death 3 times in those woods and came back stronger each time. I believe you didn't break when I wanted you to, didn't run when given the chance, and didn't yield even when wisdom said you should." She stood, crossing to the bedside. "I believe Frostmourne needs a Luna who can survive what's coming." It wasn't quite friendship, but it was respect, hard-earned and genuine. A knock at the door interrupted them. Phelan entered without waiting for permission, his expression unreadable. Brinja took one look at him and quietly departed, closing the door behind her. Silence stretched between them. Malric confessed, Phelan said finally, his voice low and controlled. "Under interrogation." He was paid by the Silverpeak clan to ensure Frostmourne lost its voice at the Lifeblood Council. Your failure or death would have accomplished that. Seraphine's stomach tightened. "And now you've passed all 3 trials." He moved closer, torchlight casting shadows across his scarred features. "The pack accepts you. More than accepts, they revere you. A moonbound healer hasn't walked among our kind in 3 generations." His pale eyes searched hers. "You could leave. The bargain is fulfilled. You've given me what I needed for the council." Her heart stuttered. "Is that what you want?" "What I want," Phelan said quietly, something raw entering his voice, "stopped being simple the moment you survived the frost harrow." He reached out, his calloused hand cupping her cheek with unexpected gentleness. "I brought you here as a strategy, a role to fill, but you became something I didn't plan for." "What?" she whispered. "Someone worth protecting, worth standing beside." "Worth," he stopped, jaw tightening. "The Luna ceremony is tomorrow. You can refuse it, return to Ironvale with honor and compensation. Or you can stay and claim what you've earned through blood and courage." Seraphine thought of the girl who'd stood alone at the Ironvale ceremony, unclaimed and unwanted. Then she thought of the woman who'd walked through fire and ice and darkness, who'd discovered power in her veins and steel in her spine. She wasn't that abandoned girl anymore. "I stay," Seraphine said, her voice steady and sure. "Not because you need me for a council seat. Because Frostmourne is mine now. I bled for it. I survived for it." She met his gaze without flinching. "And because what started as pretending has become something real." Phelan's expression shifted, relief, desire, and something deeper flooding across his features before he pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. "Then tomorrow," he murmured, "you become Luna." And the realm will learn what happens when they underestimate a blackthorn. Outside, wolves howled in anticipation of the ceremony to come. Inside, Seraphine finally allowed herself to believe she'd found where she belonged. Thank you for watching this far. If this story made your heart race, your stomach twist, or your breath catch, you're exactly who I'm writing for. And trust me, you haven't seen anything yet. Subscribe, hit the bell, and come back tomorrow. New videos drop daily.